Hi, beautiful soul. Welcome back to Rainbow Children of the Light. I'm Heather. So, I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked at your child and felt like, they're a little bit different, or they feel things a little bit deeply, or they don't quite fit into the usual way of doing things? Or maybe there's just this quiet knowing that they're here for something more. If that resonates, this video is for you. Today, I'm sharing 5 signs you might have a new earth child, and more importantly, what they need from you to really thrive. Before we go into the signs, I just want to explain what I mean by this, because you might already feel this, but not have the words for it yet. So, a new earth child is really a soul who has come into this lifetime a little differently. They're often more aware, more sensitive, and more connected, not just to themselves, but to everything around them. And from a spiritual perspective, these children are here to help shift the energy of the planet. They're here to raise the Earth's vibration, support the ascension of the Earth, and bring in new, more heart-led ways of living. And something that feels really important to understand this is they're not here for the old way. A lot of us here now were conditioned over many, many years. We followed systems, we did what we were taught, and then maybe later on in life we had a spiritual awakening. But these children, they're coming in already so much more connected at a soul level. They're not here to spend decades of trying to remember who they are. They're here to start living that much earlier. So another thing I see a lot with these children is that they just don't feel what's happening in their own little world. They can actually be really affected by other people's emotions, things that are happening around them, even what's happening on a bigger global level. So if you've ever had that moment where your child is overwhelmed and you're thinking, this doesn't quite match what's going on right now, it could be because they're tuning into more than what we can physically see. And this sometimes, I really want just to pause and think about, how we actually take this in, because it can be labeled as too sensitive, too emotional, too much. It's often actually a child who is deeply connected, highly aware, and they're here with purpose. So it's just a different perspective, a different way of seeing our children, because being labeled as sensitive can be a bit of a negative term in today's society, but really it is such a gift. So sensitivity might look like they don't like loud noises, or they get overwhelmed in busy places, or they're really particular about clothing or textures. It isn't them being difficult, it's their nervous system is just processing a lot more. And what they really need is that feeling of safety. They need calmer environments, gentle transitions, space to regulate. And instead of trying to toughen them up, we actually support them in feeling safe in their sensitivity. So the second sign is empathy. These children just don't notice emotions, they actually feel them. So you might notice they get upset when someone else is hurt, or they're affected by things happening to others, or even things like on the news can impact them. And sometimes they're carrying emotions that aren't theirs. So what they need most is help understanding what belongs to them. Simple things like, is that feeling yours or someone else's? And gently teaching them if they don't have to hold everything that they feel. Because quite often we are loading up our energetic systems with other people's stuff, but we can't differentiate, especially they can't differentiate between what is their emotions and what is somebody else's, and it all becomes so overwhelming for them. The third sign is that they can go really deep into thought. You might see them just sitting there, staring off into the stars. It can almost feel like they're somewhere else. And these children quite often, they think deeply, they ask big questions, or sometimes they just feel really wise for their age. And what they need most is space. Space to think, space to process, and to be listened to. Even if what they're saying feels a little bit out there, they're not just daydreaming, they're often connecting into deeper layers of awareness. And quite often, I find that these children are they're having connection with the divine. It is an experience that they're having in those deeper thought moments, and they're really taking everything in. So the fourth sign is their connection to nature. You might notice that they love being outside, they feel calm around animals, or they really get affected by harm to the environment. Nature is really regulating for these children. So what they need most is connection to the earth. So this is time outside, bare feet on the ground, just being in natural spaces. It really brings their whole system back into balance. And this kind of ties into the previous one where we are overcrowding our kids with not much ability to have these times for thinking and processing and being in nature, because we're really quite schedule heavy. We've got after school activities, we've got lots of things going on with friends and play dates and birthdays, which is all wonderful, but we just need to make sure we also schedule in those times in natural spaces where they can just naturally be. There's no screens, there's no pressure, there's no organization. They just feel into that space, and whatever comes up naturally is what they go with. And this is really, really important in nurturing them. So the fifth sign is that some of these children might be neurodivergent. So they might be labelled as ADHD, autism, sensory processing differences. And this is something I know because I have a daughter on the spectrum, and both my daughters are ADHD, though very different varieties of ADHD, if that's the right wording. And something I also see in my work is that the neurodivergent children often have very porous energetic systems, which means they take in more and they feel more and they become overwhelmed more easily. And this is going back to the other previous points as well, is that they just take on so much of other people's stuff, so much of the world around them, so much of that collective consciousness. So what they really need help with is not trying to get them to fit into, square peg, round hole, because it's really tricky. It is very tricky they are so much more advanced souls coming through, and we haven't caught up. Our school systems haven't caught up. Our society hasn't caught up. So it can be really tricky trying to fit in. So being able to support them naturally can help. And I find things that really help with my kids is energetic clearing. So clearing their energy bodies of all other people's stuff, grounding them, having time and space for them just to play and just to explore and just to create, and having safer environments for them. So this can look like I like to have a specific time set aside for no screens, just play, and having a time limit on it. It's like, yeah, okay, you can have your screen, absolutely. But first of all, we're just going to have an hour. And usually what happens is they go off and they play on the trampoline, or they go and play in the sand, or they go and play with the dog or the cat. And just this ability just to have that connection with the nature and the space and having that processing time really, really helps them. So if you're watching this and thinking, this is my child, you're not alone. Just take a breath. You're not imagining it, and your child isn't too much. They're just wired differently, and it's so beautiful. And the most important thing is that they don't need to be changed. They really just need to be seen, understood, supported, and acknowledged. So I would love to know in the comments which of these signs feel most like your child, and if any of this resonated for you. So don't forget to subscribe and stay here for more spirit-led parenting and understanding your child at a deeper level. And you can also sign up to my free Facebook community group where we can connect with like-minded spiritual mums, Rainbow Children of the Light. All the links are in the show notes below. I'm sending you and your little ones so much love.